Hello, Gavin here, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at cool ways to use a fretless bass. So fretless bass is something I use quite often. Actually, if you watch any of the videos on my channel, there's a good chance that you've seen this bass in some other clips. And really, this is something that I've loved the sound of since I heard Gary Numan's work in the early 80s on albums like I Assassin with Pino Palladino on bass and the Warriors album with Joe Hubbard on bass. I highly recommend checking out both those albums if you're into fretless bass because they are fantastic examples of what can be done with instrument. But these days, you're not going to hear fretless bass too often. It's something that not all bass players are using now, and really it's just a select few that specialise in it. Which to me is a real shame, because I think fretless has a lot of sounds it can make, and can create a lot of unique textures that a fretted instrument can't. In fact, when I've been doing session work, I've had long spells where I've only played fretless bass. In certain acts, it was the perfect sound for that. But today we're not going to just focus on the standard fretless tone. We're going to look at how you can use fretless within your everyday playing and for some really cool things that a fretted bass would never be able to pull off. So the first clip you heard at the start of the video was kind of the iconic fretless tone, similar to the Jaco Pastorius tone, but also in the same vein as that Pino Palladino sound that was so iconic in the 80s. And that was created by using the bridge pickup only, with the tone up full, and I had a chorus plugin on Ableton. So I was running my bass into a chorus plugin. Now the thing that's interesting here is that Pino's tone would have been a little bit more aggressive with him playing the fretless Stingray, but we can still get quite close with that bridge pickup tone. Then of course that bridge pickup also gives us the iconic Jaco Pastorius tone. So it's a really good starting point if you want to start diving into iconic fretless tones, to stick with that bridge pickup and get used to how that sounds, particularly adding in effects like chorus. And for the second clip, we're going to be sticking with that chorus sound. We're going to turn on the neck pickup, but we're also going to play some slap bass now. Now, this is definitely not something you hear often nowadays. Often for slap bass, we associate that with a jazz bass, but a fretted jazz bass, and artists like Larry Graham, Flea, and that iconic slap tone. But in the 80s, there was plenty of players using a fretless to play slap. In fact, that album I mentioned at the start, the Warriors album from Gary Numan, if you look up the live recordings of that, there's a fantastic recording of Joe Hubbard playing slap bass on a fretless, and it sounds amazing. So we're going to try and recreate that sound today, but we're going to use both pickups this time, and we're going to use that same chorus plugin that we used earlier. So let's have a listen to how that sounds now. slap bass, because we can also use slap bass in a bluegrass environment or a country environment. I know that sounds a bit crazy and a bit unusual, but if we turn off the chorus plugin and we play a combination of notes and mute notes or ghost notes, we can recreate the sound of a double bass. So let's have a look at that now in the next clip so you can see how that sounds. Next up, we're going to look at probably the craziest sound in this video, and we're going to look at using one of these. We're going to use a slide on bass, or a bottleneck. Now, this is obviously a very unusual technique, but there are plenty of bass players that do this on a fretted bass. But when we do it on a fretless bass, we can kind of recreate the sound of a lap steel guitar. See, a lap steel guitar doesn't have frets. It's a fretless instrument as well, so we can recreate that feel on an electric bass. But an even cooler way to do this is to play our bass in an open tuning. You see, we typically tune E, A, D, G on a standard bass, but if we tune the D down to a C, we can play a root 5 chord with the slide on the D and G strings if we play on the same fret. So we're going to use that now in the next clip. I'm going to be using the Gojira Effects Mr. Sparkle drive, which is a Tube Screamer style overdrive but with the bass mod turned on. So we'll be using that for a bit of drive, and we'll be running direct into Ableton like we'll have for all these clips running through my Mark bass combo. So we're going to hear that now. I will be using a pick which actually got completely destroyed in the process of recording this clip. That's okay, totally worth it for the sounds we got out of it. So let's have a listen to that now so you can see how that sounds. Last but not least, we're going to look at synth bass. I know you're so surprised, but I had to include synth bass in this because fretless is perfect for playing synth bass. The slide that you can do on a fretless between notes perfectly replicates the portamento controls or the glide controls on many synths. So if we want to recreate the iconic synth sounds that you can get with the mod wheels on like a Moog or something along those lines, a fretless bass really is the perfect tool for that. So what I'm going to do in this next clip is I'm going to play really simple bass lines. I'm not going to play anything fancy, nothing complicated. I'm just going to slide between notes. Slide up to a note and slide down to a note. And the sound and feel you'd get from playing simple bass lines but just using these slides perfectly recreates that feel you want for synth bass. But I'm going to use that clip to play out today, so before we do that, I just want to give you a couple of final thoughts. For me, the fretless bass is a critical part of my setup. I couldn't do most of the things I do on the bass guitar without using a fretless at some point. As you've seen today, it can give you a unique slap sound, can be perfect for country, which I actually am kind of gutted that I found that technique after I stopped playing with a bluegrass group, because that would have been perfect for that setup. Then we've also seen that you've got the classic Jaco and Pinot style tones, and of course synth bass, which you're about to hear next. It really is the perfect instrument for creating unusual sounds. and sounds that aren't typical of a bass guitar. So when you combine that with the already fantastic sound you get from a fretless bass, for me it just highlights why I need a fretless bass in my setup. But of course, that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you all think about this, so let me know which of these sounds was your favourite in the comments below, and also how you're using a fretless bass, because I'd love to hear what you're all doing. So thanks again for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and again if you liked this video, please hit like and subscribe down below, clicking the bell icon to be notified of more content when it comes out. And until next time, keep working on those bass faces.